Let's wrap up day 1, 2, and 3. The draft is over, Jeff. Walk me through the board, the players you love, you don't love. Who'd they take?
Well, we'll just start from the very beginning, and we've covered this. If you guys haven't already, you can go back and check last week, our shows then. We did it on Saturday. Me and Adam broke down day 2 of the NFL draft. But just to go through, obviously Jahmyr Gibbs, this could go a lot of different ways depending on who you ask. Now, if you don't value running backs in the first round, you're not going to be a huge fan of the pick. But we've discussed this. Me and Adam have went back and forth, and I guess the thing to take away from it is not to put Jahmyr in strictly a box. He's a weapon. He's an offensive weapon. Brad alluded to that in the press conference. So Jahmyr Gibbs, if this tells us anything, signing David Montgomery, drafting Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round, it's clear the Lions want to run the football, especially with Jared Goff. That's the big reason why I advocated for Bijan Robinson. We know how good Jared is in play action. So get him a solid run game. Now, go to the second round, or excuse me, the second first-round pick, Jack Campbell. I mean, and we discussed this as well. Even if you don't like the pick, just think about it like this. He was clearly the best player on the Lions draft board, and on top of that, you needed a linebacker. We all agree there. So why not take the best linebacker, the only linebacker with a first-round grade? And if you look at, the 40 time, the 4.65, I think that gets lost a little bit because he had the highest athleticism score among all linebackers. So if you're going off that, the 3-cone drill, he's more quick than fast, I guess is the right word. So Jack Campbell, both guys in the first round, going to be able to contribute right away. And I talked about that already. So despite what you say, both those guys are going to make an impact immediately, now with the departure of Swift. Sam Laporta, all right, Sam Laporta, I don't mind. We have to wait and see because, again, he's the second tight end drafted. And you pick him at 34, right after Sam Laporta, a run on tight ends immediately right after. So for Brad, you had the option to select who you liked. Michael Mayer was there. You went with Sam Laporta. This guy, out of all the tight ends, he broke the most tackles. You can't get to him. So a guy, an explosive weapon, someone that Jared Goff is going to be immediately able to use. So those are 3 guys that are going to be able to make an impact right away. Brian Branch, ladies and gentlemen. Brian Branch. My favorite pick of the entire draft. And if you talk about value, and Adam, you would agree, value, a player that we had mocked at 18, a first-round grade, the best safety in this class, you got him not only in the 3rd round, but you got him your 4th player taken.
What, do you run a 10th of a 40 slower than Kyle Hamilton? And Hamilton went 14 last year, 13, 14?
And by the way, I say safety, but he's not even a safety. You just put DB on him. He played everywhere. I mean, he was deep safety. He played in the nickel. He played corner. I mean, the guy is basically a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, especially if Chauncey Gardner-Johnson leaves and you can't re-sign him. Here comes Brian Branch, able to fill pretty much the exact same role. Swiss Army knife DBs. I mean, Brian Branch.
The Philadelphia Eagles model, no?
Yeah, it's pretty much. That's what they're trying to build with AG. Likes to use a lot of DBs. And Brian Branch, I mean, for him to even be there and they trade up and grab him, it's immaculate. We talked about them needing a DB.
This morning, aren't you?
I love it. Brian Branch, to me, was my favorite pick, and I think many would agree. Best value in the draft.
All right, well, here's where I think best value comes in. Hendon Hooker in the 3rd round. Out of all the picks, I mean, let's just be honest here. If Hendon Hooker ends up becoming Jared Goff, let's say he's as good as Jared Goff. You just drafted someone who was taken number 1 overall in the 3rd round, who you can likely, if you're not happy, or maybe you are happy with Jared Goff, you don't want to move off from him, you have Hendon Hooker waiting to be flipped for a 2nd, maybe even a 1st-round pick. Who knows?
Yeah.
We've seen these deals happen for years now. Hendon Hooker, I mean, in the 3rd round, no risk involved.
No.
You take him. He's going to sit in the beginning. He's going to learn. And God forbid, something does go wrong. This is an insurance policy.
Yep.
Jared Goff misses a few games, or he goes down long-term, and then his future is in question. Oh, okay. Well, we drafted this guy. Let's make a decision here. Do we bring back Goff for his final year? Do we move on? So many hypotheticals we can go through on the Hendon Hooker thing. I love it. I don't think it's as binary as Alex Smith in Kansas City, and they took Mahomes. Mahomes was a 1st-round pick. They traded up to 10th overall to draft him. Hooker's a 3rd-round pick. I think there's a huge difference here, guys. So I don't think this means Jared Goff's future is in question in Detroit. I just think Brad Holmes bought an insurance policy. I love it.
And we talked about this last week, too, the whole quarterback discussion. And your big argument was, I'm not taking the 3rd or 4th best quarterback at 6. What if I told you could take the 3rd or 4th best quarterback in the 3rd round? Like it's very different in terms of the risk and reward. Lower risk
when
now
I
with
say
Hendon
that,
in the third.
though, in reality, when I say that, you have to look at each draft individually.
Yeah.
You know, let's be honest. No hindsight here. You go back to the Mahomes, Deshaun Watson draft, okay? Your honest opinion, before they ever played it down in the NFL, coming out, it was Watson 1, Mahomes 2, Trubisky 3. Chicago traded up and drafted Trubisky, I believe, number 2 overall.
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah. Cool. Traded up to get him, too. It's crazy.
And then you're talking the second and the first best quarterback coming out that were selected at 10 and 12. So it's different, you know, depending on the scenario you want to use. The Josh Allen draft. Josh Allen was the 3rd quarterback taken, I believe, and Lamar went later at the end of the first round. So you rank those quarterbacks as prospects. I mean, to be fair, some guys had Josh Allen up there with Darnold and Baker. So it all just depends on the year. There are years where you look at the number 1 and 2 guys, and I think this is one of those years where you're like, those are the best guys. And there's
right.
Like,
pretty clear cut.
It's pretty obvious. I don't think there's going to be a Josh Allen in this draft. So, you know, that's what I mean when I say you take the 3rd, 4th best guy. It's not because they're ranked that high, but it's what they are coming out. Are they a project? Are they not? Anthony Richardson, some saw him as the number 1 prospect. He went 4th overall. So, you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. I think the Lions had a hell of a draft, but I can't lie to you guys. I think last year they obviously were one of the 4 or 5 best teams in terms of who won the draft. I don't think they're up there this year. I don't. I think in their own eyes, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think in the opinion of everybody in Allen Park, they're really happy with the draft. They got the players they wanted, and good for them. I support that. I have no problem with that at all. But I don't think nationally everyone's going to look at this black and white and say, oh, yeah, Lions crushed it. I think people like the branch pick. I think people like the hooker pick. I think there's a lot of question around Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's what I want to get to before we even move on with anything. Draft night, I was shocked they took Jahmyr Gibbs. Friday morning, we did a show. I was still in shock. I've gotten to sleep on it 3 days now. And let me make the case for Jahmyr Gibbs making sense. And I'm going to thank you for talking me into this, but it's the only way I can make it make sense. I'm not saying he's going to be Deebo Samuel or Alvin Kamara. That's a hard thing to say. But if he is more of a receiving player than a guy who runs the football, you can convince me that there's value there. I'm essentially drafting a receiver here who's a hybrid. Now, is Deebo Samuel the future of the NFL? I don't know. There's only one like him. Is that what the Lions envision for Jahmyr Gibbs? Maybe. Maybe. Cool. Is that a future option for running backs and receivers in the NFL? Maybe. But it has to be that level of talent, production, and capability to justify that pick. Because I think you would agree with me. He's not carrying the ball 16, 17, 18 times a game. So you have David Montgomery for. And even then, he won't carry the ball that often unless you're just winning by 2-3 possessions. So that to me, which you explained pretty well to me, is if he's a hybrid,
right,
and he's a 70, 75 catch guy, which would be insane year 1, but if he is that, I think you drafted a receiver at 12, and typically receivers go in the top 10,
right,
given their talent. So you can convince me of that. I still don't love it. It still doesn't look great. I still don't feel great about it. But if you want to convince me that it's going to work, it would have to work out that way.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't shocked on draft night. I think most people would agree they were shocked. But trying to understand why Brad took Jahmyr Gibbs is what I've been trying to do. And this is why I give you a lot of credit, because you're trying to make it make sense. That's the biggest part.
What do you want me to do, though? You want me to sit here and bitch and complain for the next 6 months?
You could.
It's not my job, though.
No, it's not. It's trying to understand what point of view Brad's seeing it from. And obviously with Jahmyr Gibbs, it's the explosiveness, led Alabama in receptions. I get they didn't have a ton of talent this year, but only dropped like 2 balls. I mean, the guy is consistent in the pass
Leading
game.
receiver for Alabama,
So,
like you said.
And he talked to Ben Johnson. Go check out Tim 20-minutes interview with Jahmyr. It was great. He discussed how Ben wants to utilize him. He told Jahmyr, we want to get you more involved in the pass game, especially without Jamison Williams the first 6 games. So if you get, an elite threat in the passing game and somebody that you can utilize in the run game with his explosiveness. He was a kick returner on Alabama as well. He played all 3 phases in the pass game, the run game, and he played special teams. Yep. So the guy can ball. That's what's going to justify this pick. I agree with you.
Can I ask you something?
Not just strictly running the football.
Friend to friend here.
What's going on?
You've worked with me long enough.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm pretty out there. It's just, maybe I'm fucked up. I don't know.
Maybe.
But look, I can't sit here and say like let Brad Holmes cook as a cover for what he did. Conventionally, it doesn't add up. But like you guys said, if this guy is going to be a hybrid of Deebo Samuel, Alvin Kamara, it's a very good football player on a very good offensive line with a good quarterback, with a very good offensive coordinator, with already a top 10 offense in the NFL you'd expect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Lions got better. And I think, to me, that was my overall takeaway, because it's hard for me to look at picks 12 and 18 and really just 12 and say, like, yeah, I feel awesome. I don't.
Right.
I'm good because it's Brad Holmes, and I do think he's the best GM you've ever had in this town. And I do have a lot of faith in it. Some of it may be blind faith a little bit. But that's where I'm at this morning. I think they're a better football team. That's the way you have to look at it. I think they got a lot better. I still think the Niners and the Eagles are a step ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're probably still a year ahead of them. But the Lions, guys, they are one of the most fascinating projects in football right now. This is the year. This is the year to win the North and do a lot of great things.
And this is what I got to give you and Neil credit, because, one, you about the Lions, even before the draft, you kind of understanding, like, hey, the Brad and Dan are going to bring in guys they like specifically. And
you know what?
They're not going to take too many risks on guys like Jalen Carter, and you were right.
And Chuck said this too, and he's bringing up your point. Adam, you have talked about it. If it's your guy, you take him even if it's 5-10 spots early.
Right.
Yes, you're right, and that's why I'm okay with the Campbell pick. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, all the experts had Jahmyr Gibbs in the middle of the 2nd round. I'm not that guy. I'm not going to sit here and pound the table saying that, okay? What I am going to say is the Gibbs pick shocked me. It never clicked in my head that was a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Yeah, I'm an advocate for taking your guy. I don't care where it is. I am, of course. I just did not expect him to be that guy. I just really didn't. So